Hello and welcome back to the Argyle Financial Controller Forum. My name is Vicki Lynn Brunskill with Argyle. It's great to have everyone joining us today. Just a couple of notes before I turn things over to our esteemed speaker. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. And at any time during today's event, you can visit those virtual booths from the main agenda page. Those include complimentary materials, information, and also meet and greet opportunities. To ask questions throughout this session, simply type into the Q&A chat and we will address your questions throughout the session and at the end. And now, without further delay, I would like to introduce our speaker, David Levy, Senior Vice President, Controller, Principal Accounting Officer at Vonage. We are so excited to have David with us for a keynote presentation titled The Future of Cloud-Based Accounting. Welcome, David. Over to you.
Thank you, Vicki Lynn, and thanks to Argyle for sponsoring today's event. This is a great opportunity to share some discussions around my experiences in the cloud. I've done, quite frankly, several finance transformations where the cloud has made life a lot easier for finance professionals, but the transition, the transformation, and the technology continues to move, change, and gets better every day. However, our challenges continue to grow in terms of what we have to offer the rest of the organization and how this helps us do that. Cloud is actually has not been around all that long. I mean, I remember a time where everything was on the web and we just said, oh, that's great, we're on the web, so everything's really good. The problem is all the systems and all the processes, everything was still on-prem. So you had hard frame, you had mainframe, you had all kinds of servers in locations that you were managing yourself, and you had applications, and you had IT and engineer people managing it all, and at the end of the day, you were still responsible for everything going on in that infrastructure, including security, including data storage, and all of the things that could go wrong in all of those environments. What the cloud has really allowed us to do is to continue to evolve using applications that are managed by companies and individuals that run those applications and know it best and continue to maintain it. We'll go through some discussions around some of the benefits and some of the risks associated with being on the cloud, but ultimately it is absolutely the future, not only of accounting, of everything. I mean, everything is on the cloud today, and if you're not, and if it isn't, and if you process outside the cloud because you've got your own on-prem systems, processes, and data storage and security management and all those things, you're probably, first of all, spending a lot of money. Two, you're probably more exposed than you need to be. And three, ultimately, you're not as efficient as you could be. So I just have just a couple of really quick slides on just some of the benefits and risks. So yeah, I mean, it's processing. It's not just accounting, but we're going to try to focus a little bit more on the accounting side as we think about the audience and mostly finance people that are sitting here. So as I started off the discussion, we talked about on-prem versus hosted. Ultimately what happens is you have to run a physical application on a server. And if you're doing that, you have an entire IT, engineering, security, maintenance staff having to do all of those things. And there's a benefit there too. I mean, you can customize, you can do a lot of things that you can't really do today. So if you're on an Oracle or an SAP site and using and having it hosted, so if you're on an ERP, again, Oracle or SAP, there's a lot of things you can't customize like you used to if it was on-prem and you had your own engineers and you can manipulate the software, the application the way you wanted to. But on the other hand, if it goes down and there's problems, instead of having to bring in an entire team to try to fix it, you just call up your app representative and say, hey, this isn't working, it needs to be fixed. So, big difference between on-prem and hosted. and transferring from the physical or the application of risk. So it is a very big difference there. So what else have we done? So we have, as I said, minimized the implementation and maintenance process. So you're no longer maintaining and implementing software. What you're doing is maintaining and implementing access to software on the cloud through an application that someone else is hosting and managing. Again, it will limit your ability to do certain customizations. However, there are applications that will allow you to do certain ad hoc reporting and analysis, and there's modules within that existing environment that you can do all those things. So you don't lose customization entirely. However, you do have the ability to maintain that system when it goes down, or if it doesn't go down, it isn't working the way you'd like it to. It is served by the application owner. Effective timely data updates. So, that does not mean that you don't have a a period of time where you're down. The application owner still has to shut the system down, still has to update it, but it almost happens in the background. The issues that come up from timely updates is, number one, they may not be as scheduled as you'd like. They may not be scheduled when you like, and they may be scheduled at a time you don't even know it's happening. And so what I've seen, things could go wrong there too. What happens is things that are linked, integrations that are linked, processes, downloads, uploads to data warehouses, analysis that is done through another tool where data is coming off of that ERP. Sometimes they break, and they may break because of all of the updates that the application owner is managing. So at the end of the day, that doesn't mean you don't go there. You just have to be very let's just say communicative and engaged with the application owner. So ultimately you want to know, and you want to demand to know when they're updating all of the applications. A global shared access. So another really good benefit of cloud, if you are on-prem and your ERP is on-prem and you're running your own servers or mainframes, not everything is accessible globally. You might have some firewalls, you might have some applications that don't translate to a particular location in the world. And when you're on the cloud and the application is on the cloud and you're being hosted, typically access becomes actually very simple, very easy. You still have to maintain controls. You still need to know who has access and what they have access to, and that's something that needs to be tested every period to ensure that the accessibility of all of the applications are as intended. But global shared access is absolutely a huge benefit associated with the cloud. The other thing too is the mobile access. So I recall many years being on-prem, having all the customizations and all the things that I wanted it to do, all the functionality and all the things that I needed our ERP to do and to download and to upload and to do all of these different functionalities that we had customized and built. But when I wanted to start accessing them on my phone, so if I wanted a quick summary, or if I wanted an update, or if I wanted a particular report, couldn't do it on the mobile. Well, on the cloud, when you have access, when you access through a mobile app and you're going through a hosted application, it is actually much more simple. Nothing's ever completely easy, but it is absolutely one of the reasons you go on the cloud is so you can start accessing mobile. Your executives would love, and I can tell you right now, most of the time I'm on my phone. I like to access summary reports. I like to access the system and do things, approve things, and do a lot of the things on the on my mobile, because I'm active. I'm running around. I'm traveling. I'm trying to go from place to place. So it allows me to be more nimble and quite frankly more engaged in the market, in the field, and running around and walking around. I have my phone with me. I can always access what needs to be accessed. And so and I think this is the theme, it diffused IT infrastructure, and the IT infrastructure cost, and to a large extent increased reliability. You have people who are experts in the application hosting that application on a constant basis. And that doesn't mean things don't go wrong. It doesn't mean that things are going to run perfectly all the time, but the fixes typically are quicker. The fixes are typically identified earlier, and ultimately, you're going to have a much lesser cost structure. You're paying a particular fee for a seat, as opposed to paying payroll and salaries. And again, you still need engineering and IT infrastructure, but most of that is for the integrations, the other applications that link the data room, the data management, security. What a lot of companies do is they'll actually outsource their data management, and that data management, has inherent in it its security. So not only are you on the cloud for the application, you're actually on the cloud for your data storage as well, data storage and security. So again, I want to be clear, that doesn't mean you don't need IT, engineering, infrastructure, and security in-house. You still need all of those things, but all of those things are essentially combating the ability to, or the inability for someone to access inappropriately your hosted environment. So it is absolutely necessary to have a very significant security process in place. You have to be 100% aware. You can't be 100% secure, because there's always going to be someone who figures out a way. But what you need to be is 100% aware that someone is either has or is trying to access your hosted environment. So centralized security is absolutely critical. Moving forward, so effective data storage and access. So I talked a little bit about having your data storage and access, on the cloud as well. And so you access all of your data through the ERP, and manage and sort of manipulate all the data. Have the outputs going into sort of a data warehouse that is also on the cloud. And so you no longer have to worry necessarily about data storage, access, and security for that data warehouse, only the environment for which it gets there. And then once it's there, how you're accessing it. But the data storage is typically, a lot of these big warehouses, either AWS or Microsoft. I mean, I know IBM does that as well. There's a lot of really, really strong data storage, cloud-based integrators. So really, really important. And then centralized and standardized controls. You absolutely need to have every aspect of the access to hosted infrastructures controlled. And within the ERP, you want all of the same kinds of controls and access and approval requirements that you had when it was on-prem. So I talk a little bit about the consideration there, and that's the first one there. So, what is the scope? What is the scope? What is of the ERP functional solution? So what does that mean? What applications, what modules do you have? So if you're talking about an ERP system, again, the same thing could happen if you're talking about an order to cash system. So if you have an order to cash system, or if you have a billing system, or if you have a budgeting system, or if you have a costing system, all of which could be separate applications, perhaps even separately on the cloud, and they still have to integrate. They still all have to work together. How that happens is still your engineering department within the company as to how all of that works together. As I said before, you're limiting certain customizations as you want more standardization. You want to have a cleaner environment so that if something goes wrong, it's easier to fix, but you also want less room for things to go wrong. When you're customized, heavily customized, every time there's an update, every time something goes wrong, it creates a significant amount of effort to try to hunt down what went wrong, why it went wrong, and making sure that it doesn't happen again. So again, a limitation on the cloud that is by design, something that you do want to move to. Even when we were on, most companies were on-prem, they were trying to limit customizations. You certainly always wanted to do that. It always became difficult as more departments and more executives wanted certain things. It's now arguably much better. Now you can argue that you can't customize certain things, but again, that's what the data warehouse is for. You can get a lot of reporting, a lot of analysis, a lot of automatic information. You can even introduce AI into how that information comes in and out of those platforms. So subledger integrations are also something that is important. So of all these other things I just mentioned, how they integrate, how they end up linked to the ERP is absolutely important. And again, nothing more important than making sure that your budgeting and planning and modeling is integrated. You could buy the module that's inherent in the application, or you can do something separate. But at the end of the day, it all has to work. Same thing with journals and reconciliation. If you're using a separate reconciliation tool, you want it to be linked. You want the data, the balances, all the activity to integrate seamlessly. And so that requires engineers within the company. So again, I'm just trying to give you a taste, a flavor for all the things that are important in a cloud organization. And I'll get to a couple of the Q&A in a minute. So just going on, we're talking about here about the future. And ultimately, the future is in the cloud. There's no other way for software integrators, applications, and people who need information in a way that's effective, cost efficient, and ultimately moving towards the ability to do what you need to do in a global environment, unless you're on the cloud. If you haven't thought about that evolution, that transformation, you really do need to think about it. You're leaving a lot of money on the table. You're creating a lot of risk unnecessarily, and ultimately, it isn't the way of the future. So just a few things here. Banking, the ecosystem for banking is absolutely moving that way. Your ability to create feeds automatically is absolutely coming into view here, enabling businesses to make direct payments back and forth, just shifting to mobilization, using your phones and tablets to do all kinds of things, reconciliations on your phone. That's for the consumer. The banking consumer can do bank reconciliations on your phone. A lot of these things are becoming more and more mainstream. The physical office is today something that is in decline. We've got all this real estate out there, but I can tell you most companies allow their employees to work from home. If you don't have the ability to do that on the move, you're missing out, and you're not allowing your executives and your employees to do the things you want them to do. So it's not just about accounting features. It's about how we access, how we engage, and how we secure, and ultimately how it all works together. And if you're not moving in that direction, you're going to be behind the 8 ball. Most of your competitors are moving in that direction, and so you absolutely want to think about what can they do, how do they service customers on the cloud. And if you're not doing that, you're behind, and you definitely want to be in that realm. You want to be able to be on the cloud and servicing customers, managing employees, and ultimately doing all the things you can in the most efficient and cost-effective way. There will be some radical competitive advantages. No question about it. You're already there. It's already the case. And firms are pushing full practice conversions. You've got all the major companies out there. And one thing to note: most companies will use an integrator. It's not the application owner that will come in. Oracle, SAP typically will not come in and install it for you. You'll use an integrator. One of the big installation firms. So with that said, I'm going to go to some of the questions. So I think some of these are really good. So what is your go-to criteria on, if cloud-based accounting is appropriate for your enterprise? I actually think it's appropriate for all enterprises, depending on where you are in your evolution. If you're growing, if you're global, if you're complex, if you have a lot of subledgers that have to integrate, there's nothing better than being on the cloud. A lot of the applications will do a lot of the things that you used to do internally for you. And so you definitely want to move in that direction. So, then the other question, are we worried about security? Of course, we're worried about security. We're always worried about security. I think your security is much better served with the application being managed by a hosted environment. But that does not make you absolutely free from potential breaks. You want to have your own security as to how you're accessing that hosted environment. So again, keep that in mind. Security happens on a lot of different sides, but I think if the ERP is on the cloud, that piece of it is usually pretty sound. Do you think that the future of cloud-based accounting will be taken over by AI? I think they work hand in hand. I don't. Cloud and AI are not interchangeable. Two very different things. I think being on the cloud allows you to engage and get more effective applications through AI. But AI is just automating things that humans do. If you have an ERP that is on the cloud, you'll be able to do even more than that. As you go. And the last question here is, any tips for moving payroll to the cloud? Most of the payroll providers are on the cloud, and you're using a hosted environment already. You may not realize it, but you do want to be on the cloud for payroll. If you're using an internal application, you're really exposing yourself, and you're not using the most effective means of processing. So if you're on an ADP or anything, a lot of that is hosted environments. How do you ensure security protocols are met when moving everything to a centralized location? Again, when you're on the cloud, you're not in a centralized location. A lot of the cloud applicators are redundant. They have multiple bring up and bring down hot sites. So when you go on the cloud, just because you're accessing a particular application centrally, that doesn't mean it's all in one place. It typically is. So in any event, so where are we? What are the biggest obstacles an organizations face when moving to the cloud? It's the biggest thing is the cost. It is expensive. It is not cheap, even though it's hosted. Getting the integrations, getting the applications, the licensing, it's expensive. And then ultimately convincing the organization that you no longer have the ability to be as nimble as you were in terms of customizations. That sometimes is difficult. Selecting the right integrator is always important, and can be more expensive than it needs to be if you go with too big a company or a company that doesn't understand your industry. So it's really important to select the right integrator. Last question here: how do you convince senior management that they need to fix the data warehouse when they move to the cloud? You should fix the data warehouse whether you move to the cloud or not. I mean, the data warehouse has become extremely important, and continues to be one of the most important things we do. And it is just as important as having the right ERP, just as important as having the right budgeting and forecasting tools, just as important as deciding on whether or not to use the subledgers within the environment, or to go to a third-party integrator or a third-party subledger. So, all of these things said, my opinion and the opinion of most consultants in this space is cloud is absolutely the future. And the quicker you start thinking about how you get there, the better you'll be. With that said, I think we've tackled all the questions, and we've been through the presentation. I'm going to kick this back to Vicki Lynn from Argyle. And again, thank you, Vicki Lynn, for hosting this and letting me speak today.